The council clerk pressed the resolved seal onto Amabel Rook's complaint without lifting his eyes, but Valeria Duskwood caught the box lid before it shut. "She was never interviewed," Valeria said. "You do not close a living woman's grievance by silencing the room around it." Behind the council wall, 3 ancestral knocks struck stone, then 3 more. If no one had contacted Amabel, who had dared answer for her? The clerk dropped the seal. Amabel stood beside the intake rail, her work permit folded in both hands, the ink still fresh where her office had canceled it after she complained against the revenue master. She had come expecting an interview. Instead, she watched her case vanish into a resolved box while the independent ombudsman hall was being emptied behind Valeria's shoulder. Council Chancellor Corwin Voss adjusted the cuff of his pale ministerial coat. "Procedural echoes, Mistress Duskwood. Old walls do love drama." King Severin Blackmere stood at the head of the transfer table, black royal coat fastened with white silver clasps, silver-gray eyes ringed in cold wolf light under the moon windows. He was 25, beautiful in a way that made danger look disciplined, and his centralization order had closed Valeria's hall an hour ago. Now Amabel's complaint was gone, and the office accused in it knew her name. Valeria faced Severin, not the clerk. "Your order has turned public redress into a place where complaints die without contact." Corwin's smile remained smooth. "Your Majesty centralized complaints because Mistress Duskwood's hall encouraged suspicion of government. Officials cannot govern while every bitter citizen is taught to distrust them. Complaint rights are not bitterness," Valeria said. "They are the door between power and retaliation." Severin looked toward the trembling wall. "What does the knock prove?" "One narrow thing," Valeria said. A registered complaint was closed without required contact with its registered complainant. It cannot prove the accusation, name the wrongdoer, calculate damage, decide witness credibility, or open the complaint box. "Then it does not prove Amabel's claim," Corwin said. "No. It proves your office did not lawfully close it." Another knock landed behind the council wall, hollow and patient. Severin's jaw tightened. His royal wolf shadow gathered along the floor, obsidian black with a white-silver mane and a glowing crescent at its throat. It lowered beside the wall and listened. It did not break stone. It did not open the box. It did not decide Amabel was truthful. That restraint mattered. It did not restore the interview. Corwin slid a closure summary toward the king. The active record shows complainant hostility, no usable evidence, and resolution by council review. The ombudsman hall is now abolished, so the box transfers to sealed storage. Valeria did not touch the summary. Clean summaries could be written after silence. Missing interviews left rougher edges. "Produce the interview log," she said. "Notice route, investigator assignment, contact attempts, and closure date." Corwin spread his hands. "Not while you interfere with the transfer of authority," Amabel whispered. "If they call me hostile, I lose the appeal on my work permit. No statement without a witness," Valeria said softly. Corwin's gaze sharpened. "Coaching complainants already? Protecting them from being punished for asking to be heard." A clerk lifted Amabel's complaint box toward the storage cart. Valeria set both gloved hands on the lid. She was 22, trained in intake numbering, retaliation tracking, notice verification, investigator assignment, and public office accountability. If she let this box leave, the case would enter Corwin's sealed wall before its first lawful interview. If she refused, he would call her a dismissed officer obstructing the king's reform. She chose the complainant. "I refuse transfer certification," Valeria said. "Record a procedural silence contradiction. Complaint number, complainant name, closure time, knock sequence, and missing interview log preserved." The clerk looked to Corwin. Severin said, "Record it." Corwin's expression barely changed. but the smallest displeasure tightened around his mouth. Your Majesty should know Mistress Duskwood is suspended from complaint custody for encouraging malicious accusations against lawful officials. Amabel went pale. Malicious? Valeria kept her hand on the box. A complaint cannot become malicious before anyone hears it. Severin's eyes met hers. Attraction moved there, unwelcome and bright, against the damage of his order. She could feel the man noticing her courage. She needed the king to notice his harm. Hold the hall closure until sunset, he said. Sunset gives Chancellor Voss hours to move boxes, notices, and logs, Valeria answered. Seal the storage wall now, by neutral witness. Corwin gave a low laugh. She speaks as though her abolished hall still outranks the council. No, Valeria said. I speak as though silence is not a verdict. Behind the storage wall, one sealed complaint box knocked from within. Then another, then a third. Each was marked resolved. The 3 knocking boxes made the storage wall sound less like stone and more like a hallway full of shut doors. Valeria did not let the council clerks lift another box. Names first. Corwin's men froze with their hands on the cart ropes. Severin had not yet spoken, and the pause cut its own wound. Every complainant in the transfer room heard how long power needed before it chose not to bury them. The first box knocked twice, paused, then knocked 3 more times behind the wall. Registered contact required before closure, Valeria said. 2 notice attempts, 3 interview offers. Amabel Rook pressed her cancelled work permit to her chest. They never sent one. The second box answered with 4 knocks. The third gave 6, slow enough that the whole room counted with it. A laundress at the rear began to cry because one of those boxes bore her brother's intake number. A cooper's widow showed the burn on her wrist where a tax officer's deputy had seized her stall goods after she complained. Corwin lifted his voice. No crowd will interpret ancestral noise inside a government wall. No crowd will, Valeria said. Procedure will. Severin ordered the storage wall sealed under neutral wax until review. Corwin ordered complainant separated for malicious filing assessment. Valeria heard both and looked at the people first. Stay together. Keep your intake slips on your bodies. Do not surrender permits, notices, medicine papers, rent warnings, wage stoppages, or retaliation records without a witness. A council guard stepped toward her. Severin said, No one is to touch complainant papers. Useful. Late, but useful. By afternoon, the ombudsman hall doors carried Corwin's notice. Citizens consulting suspended Valeria Duskwood may be reviewed for malicious complaint activity and obstruction of council order. Beneath it, the hall's silver intake bell had been wrapped in black cloth. People still came. Valeria took them to the market arcade opposite the abolished hall, where rain could not reach the benches and every passerby could witness if the council tried to drag someone away. She did not sit behind a desk. A desk implied office power she had lost. She knelt beside a crate and drew columns on brown parcel paper. Intake number, complainant, accused office, required interview window, notice route, investigator assignment, closure date, retaliation after filing. We are not proving every complaint true today, she said. We are proving whether the council had the right to close them. That steadied them better than comfort. Amabel laid down her intake slip, work permit cancellation, and the one notice she had received, not an interview, but a warning that false statements against revenue officers could bring penalty fees. A seamstress named Jory Bell produced a medicine allotment card canceled after she complained against a clinic inspector. Old Thomas Gray brought a housing inspection delay tied to a complaint about a council repair office. The cooper's widow, Nella Price, had a tax penalty dated 2 days after her grievance. Valeria matched intake numbers to closure dates by memory first. Then, by the copied registry list she had sewn inside her coat when Corwin announced centralization. She had not stolen records. She had kept the complainant receipt index because an office that listened had to leave citizens proof they had spoken. Severin came without guards near dusk. Every complainant stiffened. Valeria rose and stepped between him and the crate. "You may stand by the spice shutters." His silver-gray eyes took in the papers, the bruised permits, the black-draped hall across the arcade. "Corwin says evidence gathered here is contaminated. Corwin controls the room where uncontaminated evidence disappeared. I came to observe your method. Then your hands stay visible. You ask no complainant a question unless invited. You do not read private details over their shoulders. You do not say their grievance is valid because of a knock, and you do not say your presence protects them." His right shoulder shifted beneath his coat, where the old witness riot scar lay hidden. Agreed. Not trust, a boundary obeyed. Valeria turned back to Amabel's lane. Intake number A, 417. Accused office, revenue master. Required interview window, 3 days after intake, with 2 written contact attempts before closure. Closure stamp, same day as intake transfer. No investigator assignment. Retaliation. Work permit canceled after complaint filing. Severin listened from the spice shutters. Closed before the interview window opened. Yes. Corwin arrived with 2 clerks and a patient smile. Or closed because complainant hostility made interview unsafe. Amabel flinched. Valeria placed a black glove over the hostile notation without covering the dates. Hostility recorded after closure cannot justify closure before interview. Corwin's smile thinned. Citizens should understand that consulting a suspended officer may extend malicious filing review. Valeria pinned his warning to the crate. Good. Now the threat has a witness. Then she unfolded Amabel's notice receipt. It was marked delivered to Briar Court on 4th Bell, Market Day. Valeria checked the public messenger board beside the arcade, where routes were chalked for anyone expecting official papers. No council messenger had entered Briar Court on Market Day at all. Severin chose the smallest room in the East Council wing, not the judgment chamber with the raised dais. Valeria noticed. So did Corwin. The room held 1 square table, 4 chairs, 2 moon windows, and shelves of dispatch ledgers no clerk could remove without crossing sight. The grandeur was gone. What remained was procedure, bare and hard. Amabel Rook waited in the arcade with the other complainants. No complainant would enter a council room unless the terms protected them first. Valeria set her black-gloved hand on the threshold. "Before I step inside, Your Majesty, I will name the boundary." Severin stood beside the table, hands visible, royal wolf shadow lowered at his boots. "Name it. You may order access. You may command ledgers, dispatch chests, assignment books, and complaint boxes to remain in sight. You may protect witnesses from removal, but you do not take custody of complainant papers. You do not question complainants without consent. You do not speak my findings as if they came from your mouth. You do not treat cooperation as forgiveness." Corwin sighed. How generously the abolished officer instructs the crown. Severin did not look at him. Accepted. The word changed the room. Not enough to heal anything, enough to make the clerks stop pretending Valeria was there by accident. She entered. On the table lay Amabel's closure file, 2 neat by half. The outer sheet declared the complaint resolved due to hostility, lack of evidence, and complainant withdrawal. Beneath it sat an interview summary, dated 2nd Bell, Market Day. A withdrawal slip carried Amabel's name in a thin, leaning hand. Valeria read without touching. This interview was supposedly held 2 bells before the notice was supposedly delivered. A junior clerk blinked. Corwin smiled. A complainant may arrive before formal notice if she wishes to be difficult in person. She was at the revenue gate that hour asking why her work permit had been canceled. Valeria pointed to Amabel's stamped Q token. You may call a woman hostile. You cannot put her in 2 offices at once. Severin's gaze cut to the file. Who wrote the interview summary? Corwin lifted a hand toward the clerks. Council review staff prepares summaries from impressions. A messy public system requires administrative grace. Administrative grace is not an interview, Valeria said. The first crack in Severin's expression was not anger. It was recognition of a system doing what he had allowed it to do. Corwin produced 3 more folders. The ombudsman's problem is sentiment. She sees citizens and forgets officials can be destroyed by accusations. Here are withdrawals from complainants who regretted false filings. Valeria studied the slips. Same ink density, same drying pattern, same corner crease, different names, different districts, one hand trying to become 4. Bring the notice messenger for Briar Court, she said. Corwin's eyes cooled. Retired messengers are not reliable enough to direct Crown policy. The messenger board is public. His route book either supports your dispatch log or it does not. Severin turned to the door. Bring Edric Hale. They waited under the moon windows while the wall behind the shelves gave one faint knock, as if an ancestor had pressed a knuckle to stone and held back the rest. Valeria kept her gaze on the records. A knock could prove silence. Only people and paper could prove how silence had been arranged. Edric Hale arrived with rain on his collar and ink stains still black in his fingers. He bowed badly, from age rather than insolence. Valeria moved a chair back for him. Master Hale, on market day at 4th bell, did any council messenger deliver notice to Briar Court? No, mistress. Briar Court was not on the east routes that day. Corwin leaned forward. Memory weakens. Edric laid his route book on the table. Ink does not. The page showed 4th bell assigned to Mill Steps, Tallow Lane, and the North Infirmary door. No Briar Court, no Amabel Rook. The next page bore a copied dispatch list in a cleaner hand, inserted after the route totals had been signed. Valeria tapped the seam where the paper had been rebound. This copy was added later. Edric nodded. After delivery day, I complained when I saw old numbers written into new lines. Clerk told me centralization required tidier books. Severin's hand closed once, then opened. He did not reach for the ledger. He looked at Valeria instead, waiting. That waiting shifted something dangerous in her chest. He had power enough to seize the proof and call it protection. He chose not to. Corwin slid Amabel's withdrawal slip toward Edric. Do you recognize this delivery? Edric put on his spectacles. I recognize the seal, not the route. What does that mean? Severin asked. It means it was stamped for dispatch. Edric pointed to the unbroken gray thread. If the notice had left the chest, the thread would be cut at the desk. The wolf shadow lifted its head toward the dispatch cabinet. Open the dispatch chest, Valeria said. Corwin's smile vanished. The chest contains confidential notices unrelated to this matter. Then open it under witness glass, Severin said. A clerk fetched the iron key with shaking hands. Inside the chest lay sealed envelopes, each bearing delivery marks, each thread uncut. Edric read the top names aloud, one by one. Several complaints had been logged as delivered while their notices were still sealed inside the council dispatch chest. The sealed notices changed the shape of the room. Until that moment, Valeria had been chasing closures without interviews. Now she saw a second silence. Notices marked delivered while still locked in council custody. A complainant could not miss an interview she had never been invited to attend. Severin ordered the East Records room held open through midnight. No clerk left alone. No ledger crossed the threshold. No complaint box moved without 2 witnesses and a wax count. Corwin accepted the order with polished obedience. A few dispatch errors do not justify resurrecting an office that taught citizens to suspect every official who denied them something. Valeria looked up from the dispatch chest. Then the investigator books should comfort you. They did not. The first assignment ledger had columns for intake number, accused office, investigator, interview date, closure date, and review reason. Amabel's line showed no investigator. Jory Bell's complaint against the clinic inspector showed no investigator. Nella Price's tax deputy complaint showed no investigator, though it had been closed for lack of evidence. Tomas Gray's housing grievance had an investigator assigned 3 days after the file was already resolved. Severin read the dates twice. They closed before anyone was assigned to examine them. Not accidentally, Valeria said. Accidents scatter. This repeats. She set the intake index beside the assignment ledger, then the dispatch route book beside both. Her black gloves moved with calm precision. Number to number, date to date, silence to silence. The knock in the wall sounded once whenever a closed complaint seal passed through moonlight, but she did not let the room lean on magic. The knock tells us contact failed, she said. The ledgers tell us the failure was useful. Corwin's mouth tightened. Useful to public stability. Your Majesty knows what happens when grievance offices become theaters. One angry petitioner can ruin a revenue master, delay clinic inspections, stop housing repairs, and frighten every official into inaction. Severin's face went still. Valeria noticed the stillness because it cost him. His power usually moved like a drawn blade. Now it withdrew behind memory. Corwin turned that memory like a key. You centralized complaints because Blackmere nearly broke once under false filings. Ministers bribed witnesses, neighbors accused neighbors, and honest offices could not function. Mistress Duskwood would return us to that chaos. Severin said nothing for several breaths. His royal wolf shadow lay below the shelves, silver eyes lowered, listening to stone rather than Corwin. At last Severin spoke to Valeria, not to the Chancellor. When I was 17, a purge began with one false complaint. A magistrate bribed 3 men to file against a storehouse warden, then used the investigation to steal winter grain while everyone looked elsewhere. By the time the lie broke, people had died waiting for honest stock counts. Valeria felt the old grief under his control. She did not soften the truth for him. So you feared accusations more than silence? Yes. His answer came without defense. And Corwin knew where to press. The words did not repair Amabel's work permit. They did not reopen Jory's medicine allotment. But they moved him from injured ruler to responsible ruler, and Valeria needed the latter. False complaints require investigation, she said. So do true ones. Closure without contact protects neither. A faint answer knocked behind the wall. Severin nodded once. Continue. They moved from assignment ledgers to complaint box custody seals. Several boxes had left the ombudsman hall listed as pending review, entered Corwin's sealed storage, and returned in annual packet form as resolved. The custody slip showed the same initials at the same late bell on different days. Too neat, too hidden, too free of the friction that honest work left behind. Valeria pulled retaliation reports next. They had not been filed under complaints. Corwin's system called them personnel discipline, permit corrections, medicine ration adjustments, housing inspection delays, and tax irregularities. Yet the dates followed filings, like wolves following blood. Jory lost medicine 2 days after her clinic complaint. Nella received a tax penalty after naming the deputy who burned her stall. Tomas's housing inspection vanished from the calendar, after his grievance against the repair office. Earlier, I thought the closures hid embarrassment, Valeria said. They also made retaliation safe. Once a complaint is resolved, punishment looks unrelated. Severin's expression hardened, this time with direction. Who benefited? Valeria had been waiting for that question. She opened the contract schedule and payment approvals Corwin's clerks had insisted were irrelevant to complaint procedure, revenue collection expansion, clinic supply renewal, housing repair grants, all approved by council committees, all tied to officials or contractors named in closed complaints. Corwin laughed softly. Now we accuse every successful office of conspiracy because it receives lawful funding? No, Valeria said. We ask why complaints against funded offices were closed before contact. She turned to the quiet close code written in the margin of Amabel's line, QC9. Then Jory's, Nella's, Thomas's, 2 more. 6 total, each against an official tied to council contracts, each entered before interviews, before investigator assignment, and before any lawful notice left the dispatch chest. Behind the council wall, the 6 ancestral knocks began together. By morning, Corwin had taught the city a new word for people who complained: malicious. The notices appeared on the revenue gate, clinic arch, housing office, permit desk, and the black wrap doors of Valeria's abolished hall. Citizens pursuing closed grievances may be examined for malicious complaint activity and injury to public trust. Amabel Rook read the one beside the permit desk and folded into herself. They will never return my work permit now, she said. Valeria removed the notice from the nail, not because tearing paper undid policy, but because leaving it at eye level let fear do Corwin's work. He wants you to think asking for an interview is the same as lying. Jory Bell arrived with her medicine card stamped, ration adjusted. Thomas Gray brought a housing notice postponing inspection indefinitely. Nella Price came last, wrist wrap from the tax deputy's old burn, carrying a penalty sheet for disturbance of collection order. Each punishment wore a different office name. Each followed a complaint Corwin had marked resolved. Severin stood across the arcade, unguarded, looking at citizens who no longer knew whether the king's presence meant safety or exposure. His beauty, dark coat, and cold wolf light could command a crowd without effort. That was why Valeria did not let him come closer. Not here, she told him when he stepped toward the benches. He stopped at once. Corwin's centralization had given accused offices their names. Severin's signature had made the transfer lawful. Every frightened glance at him was evidence too. Valeria rebuilt the morning's work in public view. No sealed council ledgers this time. She asked each complainant to hold her own papers while she copied only dates, offices, and actions onto parcel sheets. Intake filing, quiet close code, retaliation, lost permit, lost medicine, lost inspection, tax penalty. Pattern first, she said. Private details stay with you unless you choose otherwise. That gave them back something the council had stolen. Control. A clinic matron named Sarah Mott crossed the arcade at noon, cap crooked from haste. Jory's allotment was not adjusted for supply. I saw the order. It came from administrative discipline after the complaint. Jory stared. They said the medicine was scarce. It is scarce, Sarah said. That is why I kept the duplicate ration count. An independent human voice. Not a friend, not a mystic wall. A woman with ink on her cuffs and fear in her throat, choosing truth anyway. Valeria copied Sarah's duplicate count beside Jory's intake number. Thank you. Stay only if you wish. I wish to keep my position. That may not be possible today. Sarah swallowed. Then I wish to keep my name clean. The words steadied the others until Corwin's clerk arrived with a gray packet tied in white cord. By order of Council Chancellor Voss, the clerk announced. Supplemental records from the ombudsman transfer are entered for public clarification. Valeria knew the packet was poisoned before she opened it. The cord was too new. The fold marks did not match old files. Inside lay withdrawal slips with firmer signatures, interview summaries with corrected times, and hostility notes dated neatly before closure. Amabel reached for the first slip, then recoiled. That is almost my hand. Almost was more dangerous than false. Corwin had learned from the first failure. These forgeries no longer put women in 2 rooms at once. They gave the council a story smooth enough for frightened officials and tired citizens. Severin's face changed when he saw Valeria's silence. What is wrong? If I answer from anger, he wins. If I use these as proof, he wins. This packet contaminates the chain. Corwin entered on the last word. Or perhaps the chain was always sentimental theater. Withdrawals exist. Interviews occurred. Mistress Duskwood simply dislikes records that spare officials from mobs. Nella's penalty sheet trembled in her hand. Valeria folded the gray packet closed. We set it aside under witness mark. We do not rely on it. Corwin's gaze moved over the complainants, selecting them one by one. Those who continue may face malicious filing review. Employers, landlords, licensing offices, and clinic boards will be notified that pending accusations have reopened. The arcade went quiet enough for the spice shutters to creak. That was the cost. Not a blade, not a dungeon, a list of names traveling to offices that already knew how to punish. Severin took one step forward, then stopped because Valeria had told him not to come closer. What protection would not make this worse? The question reached her before the man did. No royal guards around complainants, she said. It makes them look accused. No private carriage removals, no questioning without chosen witnesses, no taking papers into Crown custody. What then? Public witness benches, anonymous pattern copies, neutral clerks for dates only, safe lodging offered, not ordered. Clinic and permit freezes against retaliation until review. And you record that your centralization exposed their names. His silver gray eyes held hers. Under my seal? Under your name. For one moment, every quiet thing between them stood near the surface. Attraction, grief, anger, the shape of trust if it ever earned the right to exist. Severin bowed his head, not to her beauty, not to her forgiveness, but to the consequence. Write it, he said. Corwin smiled. Touching. Unfortunately, annual council review has been advanced to dawn. By sunrise, centralized complaint closure will be ratified as permanent efficiency reform. All quiet close cases currently marked resolved will stand unless lawfully reversed before then. Behind the sealed storage wall, the 6 knocks began again, faster now, as if the dead themselves understood clocks. Corwin made the first loss look lawful. Before the city clock struck midnight, his clerks nailed a suspension order across Valeria's black-draped hall and poured council wax over both door seams. The silver intake bell disappeared beneath an iron cage. 2 complaint carts stood in the street, covered and tagged for annual review. Valeria arrived with Amabel, Jory, Nella, Tomas, Edric Hale, matron Sarah Mott, and frightened citizens who had chosen benches over fear. A captain blocked the hall steps. Suspended officers may not enter abolished premises. I am not entering, Valeria said. I am witnessing what you are sealing. The captain looked past her to Severin. The Wolf King stood without a crown or guard line around complainants. His black coat was fastened high, white silver clasps catching lantern light, silver-gray eyes cold with the effort of not using power badly. His royal wolf shadow lay behind him, obsidian and white-maned, listening. Do not move the carts, Severin ordered. No complainant is to be detained. Corwin descended the council steps with the Dawn review packet. Mistress Duskwood is suspended. Her files are contaminated. Her witnesses were coached in a market arcade. Annual review will decide whether centralized redress survives its former keeper's spite. Valeria felt the trap close around former. If she argued for her office, Corwin would make the case about pride. If she used the poisoned gray packet, he would make it forgery against forgery. If she demanded the hall opened, he would make complainants look like a mob. So she let the hall stay shut. "We abandoned the transfer packet," she said. A stir ran through the benches. Corwin's smile returned. "How wise. We use complainant-held slips, public route testimony, independent office records, retaliation dates, contract copies, and the seals you are placing before witnesses now." His smile stopped. Valeria turned to the people. "Anyone who does not wish to continue may leave. Anyone who stays keeps their own papers. I will copy dates only." No one moved. Then Amabel stepped onto the lowest stair and held up her intake slip. Complaint A 417, Revenue Master, work permit canceled after filing. No interview. Behind the sealed hall, a knock struck once. Not loud enough for triumph, loud enough for denial to become difficult. Edric Hale lifted his route book. No Briar Court route that day. The notice mark delivered never left dispatch. A second knock answered. Matron Sarah held her duplicate ration count with both hands. Jory Bell's medicine allotment was reduced by discipline order after she complained. It was not shortage. A third knock. Nella showed her penalty sheet. Tomas showed the inspection postponement. A young permit clerk, shaking so hard Valeria nearly told him to stop, testified that license freezes were requested by offices named in complaints before malicious review notices were posted. The wall knocked for each closed case when the complaint seal caught moonlight. Not proving the officials guilty, not proving damages, proving silence. Severin said, "Clear enough for the street." Record that distinction. The ancestral knock proves procedural silence only. Mistress Duskwood's human evidence establishes the pattern. He had spoken her boundary back to the crowd, instead of taking the proof into his mouth. Valeria did not look at him long. If she did, the dangerous part of her heart might mistake disciplined respect for repair. Corwin gave a sharp gesture. Council guards rolled one covered complaint cart toward the side gate. The crowd gasped. Valeria saw the movement, saw Severin's body tighten, saw how easily his wolf could have crossed the street and frightened everyone into obedience. "Witness line," Valeria called. Complainants and clerks stepped into a row without touching guards. Edric stood at one wheel, Sarah at the other. Amabel placed her body before the horse. Severin crossed only far enough to stand beside Valeria, not in front of her. "Captain, remove your guards from complainant custody. Now." "They are protecting royal records," Corwin said. "They are removing contested records after a witness seal." Severin's voice lowered. "And they are doing it under my earlier order. Record that too." Valeria heard the admission travel through the crowd like a struck bell. Under Severin's direction, the cart cover was lifted where all could see. The custody seals were wrong. Boxes that had left the ombudsman hall pending review bore annual packet tags already marked resolved. 3 had fresh wax over broken older seals. 1 had QC, 9 written beneath the new tag, half scraped away. Valeria copied the marks. These boxes entered council storage as pending. They are leaving as resolved before review. Corwin opened the Dawn packet. Because review summaries exist. Backfilled summaries, Valeria said. With no messenger route, no investigator, no interview, and retaliation after filing. She laid a copied contract schedule beside the scraped QC 9 tag. Revenue expansion approved after Amabel's closure. Clinic supply renewal after Jory's. Housing grant release after Tomas's. A clerk ran from the archives, face gray. The dispatch originals are gone. The serious loss landed harder than the moving cart. Without originals, Corwin would call every copied route uncertain, every missing notice an archival accident. Valeria felt the proof narrow beneath her feet. For one breath, she imagined forcing the hall doors. She imagined Severin doing it for her. She imagined losing the case because power solved the wrong problem. Then we go where he cannot remove the wall, she said. At dawn, the annual review chamber filled with counselors, officials, contractors, and citizens behind a rope. The Royal Council wall rose behind Corwin's chair, polished white stone old as the first redress oath. Valeria stood outside the rope with complainant-held slips, route testimony, duplicate counts, copied contract schedules, and fresh custody observations. Severin stood beside the witness aisle, leaving her path clear. Corwin called the first case for ratification. Before he named it, a sealed complaint box hidden inside the review wall began to knock. The hidden box knocked once, then paused long enough for every counselor to pretend he had not heard it. Corwin Voss kept his hand on the annual review packet. Settling wood. Valeria lifted Amabel Rook's complainant-held slip into the moonlight crossing the witness aisle. The old seal pulsed pale white. Inside the council wall, the box answered with 2 knocks, then 3. 2 required notice attempts, Valeria said. 3 interview offers. Complaint A417 was closed without contact before lawful review. Corwin stood. This chamber will not be ruled by parlor superstition. No, Valeria said. It will be ruled by the procedure your packet claims was followed. She placed Amabel's intake copy on the witness table, then Edric Hale's copied route page, then the assignment ledger extract showing no investigator. Intake first spell. Closure same day. No Briar Court route. No investigator. Work permit canceled after filing. Behind the wall, another box began knocking. Then another. The sound traveled through stone like fists moving down a corridor. Counselors shifted away from the white wall. Contractors who had come to applaud efficient reform lowered their eyes. Corwin opened his packet. Withdrawals exist. Interviews exist. The former ombudsman rejects records that do not flatter her cause. Valeria looked to the witness benches. Master Hale. Edric stepped forward with his route book. Those notices never left my chest. Delivery pages were copied after route totals. The originals are gone now, but the public route board and my signed totals remain. Corwin snapped. A retired messenger proves nothing. Alone, no, Valeria said. Matron Sarah Mott rose next. Jory Bell's medicine was reduced by discipline order, not shortage. She laid down the duplicate ration count. The discipline order followed her clinic complaint. Valeria placed Nella's penalty date and Tomas's postponed inspection beside the other records. Retaliation follows filing. Quiet closure makes retaliation look unrelated. Corwin turned to the counselors. If every complaint can halt administration, no official will dare govern. Revenue will fail. Clinics will fear inspection. Liars will take revenge on public servants. Severin moved only to the witness rail. He did not stand before Valeria. His royal wolf shadow lowered beside the wall, white silver mane brushing stone, listening without breaking anything. I believed that argument, Severin said. The chamber went still. I believed complaint independence could become a weapon because I had seen false filings, hide theft, and cost lives. So I centralized complaints under Council Chancellor Voss. My order abolished Mistress Duskwood's independent hall. My order gave council offices custody. My order exposed complainants to offices they had accused. Corwin spread both hands. A noble acceptance. But responsibility is why we must ratify reform, not surrender to chaos. Valeria turned the contract schedule to face the council. Revenue expansion released after Amabel's closure. Clinic supply renewal after Jory's. Housing repair grant after Tomas's. Contractor payments clustered after QC. 9 complaints disappeared. The same quiet, close code appears before interviews, investigator assignment, lawful notice, and these approvals. She laid the custody observations last. Broken older wax beneath fresh annual tags. Boxes leaving storage as resolved when they entered as pending. Review summaries prepared before review. The Royal Council wall began to thunder. Not 6 knocks, thousands. Invisible fists shook the stone from floor to cornice. Silver dust fell across Corwin's packet. Complaint seals pulsed like pale hearts. The sound was absence given rhythm. Every unanswered door, every interview never offered, every notice marked delivered while still sealed. Citizens behind the rope lifted their slips into moonlight. One by one, the wall answered them. Valeria raised her voice. The knocks do not prove the accused officials guilty. They do not prove damages or decide remedies. They prove only that registered complaints were closed without required contact. The human record proves why that silence mattered. Missing routes, blank assignments, retaliation, custody breaks, review omissions, and money moving after closure. A counselor nearest Corwin stood. Chancellor, order the wall opened. Corwin's control cracked. No counselor has authority to breach annual storage during review. Severin said, I do. Open the wall under witness glass. No box leaves this chamber. No complaint is read aloud without complainant consent. Stone panels were removed before the chamber. Inside lay rows of sealed boxes, many tagged resolved, many with QC, 9 scraped beneath fresh wax. Some held notices still threaded shut. Some had no investigator card. Some bore payment review tabs in Corwin's hand. The collapse did not come as confession. It came as a system being forced to show its seams. Valeria stepped back so witnesses could see first. Count the boxes by intake number. Match each to complainant-held receipts. Mark contact missing, investigator missing, retaliation claimed. Contract tie pending review. Do not decide the complaint today. Restore the right to be heard. Severin turned to the council. Centralized complaint closure is suspended. Corwin Voss is removed from complaint custody and contract review pending independent inquiry. Every QC 9 case reopens. Every complainant receives notice, interview, and protection from retaliation. The ombudsman hall is restored with authority independent of the council. Corwin's pale face went almost colorless. You would let a suspended woman govern the crown? No, Severin said. I will let the law govern me. Valeria did not look away from him. He had caused harm by trusting the wrong order, but he stood inside the cost instead of beside it. Severin faced the benches. My centralization order made public redress into official silence. This repair begins under my name, not hers. The wall gave one final knock and fell quiet. People did not cheer at first. They breathed. Amabel lowered her intake slip as though her arm had been holding up a roof. Valeria gathered the first reopened files and placed them in complainant reach, not royal custody. Severin came no closer than the witness rail. Mistress Duskwood. She knew what he wanted and what he had not earned. His accountability had opened a door. It had not carried anyone through. Repair has begun, Valeria said. Personal trust cannot be discussed until every silenced complainant receives notice, interview, protection, independent review, and the choice to proceed without council pressure. His silver-gray eyes lowered once in acceptance. Then I will make the process worthy of that answer. Behind them, the council wall stood open, full of boxes that could no longer pretend to be resolved. Mourning did not forgive the council chamber. It only made the opened wall uglier. Rows of complaint boxes sat under witness glass, their resolved tags turned outward like false gravestones. Valeria stood before them with her black gloves folded around the first intake ledger of the restored ombudsman hall. The silver bell, freed from its iron cage, rested on the witness table until the hall doors could be unsealed. Severin signed the first repair order without a crown on his head. Every QC9 closure reopens, the clerk read aloud. Every complainant receives written notice, a chosen interview time, independent investigator assignment, retaliation protection, and a complainant-held receipt before any closure may be entered. Add the remedy election, Valeria said. The clerk's pen paused. Proceed, revise, withdraw, request protection first, or seek compensation for retaliation already suffered. The choice belongs to the complainant, not to the council, crown, employer, landlord, contractor, clinic board, permit office, or accused official. Severin looked at the clerk. Write it exactly. Amabel Rook was the first called, not because her complaint mattered more, but because her box had been the first to knock. Valeria did not sit behind the desk when Amabel approached. She placed 2 chairs side by side so no complainant had to look upward at authority. Complaint A417, Valeria said. You are entitled to an interview, investigator, work, permit freeze against retaliation, and review of the cancellation already entered. Amabel's fingers shook around her receipt. May I ask for my sister to sit with me? Yes. The word was small. It repaired more than eloquence. Jory Bell followed with matron Sarah beside her. Nella Price came with her wrapped wrist and tax penalty. Tomas Gray brought his housing notice. Each person received a time, a name, a protection order against further retaliation, and a copy that did not leave their hand. Corwin's system came apart in practical pieces. Complaint boxes could no longer transfer without 2 witness seals and a public custody line. Dispatch notices had to match messenger routes before delivery could be marked. Interview clocks began only after verified contact. Investigator assignments were posted by number, not complainant name, to protect privacy without hiding absence. Closure reasons had to be written in plain civic language and sent before appeal windows expired. Any official named in a complaint loss contract review authority over that file. All payment approvals tied to accused offices were flagged for conflict review. The ancestral knock was written into the rules as a warning, not a verdict. No complaint is proved by a wall, Valeria dictated. A knock requires human review. Silence revealed by magic must be answered by procedure. Severin signed that line slowly. By afternoon, compensation benches opened for people punished after filing. Work permits were frozen against cancellation. Medicine allotments were restored pending review. Housing inspections were returned to the calendar. Tax penalties tied to active complaints were suspended. Safe lodging was offered, not ordered. Witnesses chose whether their names stayed sealed. Severin paid for the first month from the Royal Discretionary Reserve. Then he ordered an audit of the offices that had benefited from complaint closure, including his own council seal. That cost him more than coin. Officials who had bowed to him that morning now looked at him as a ruler who had made himself reviewable. Valeria watched without softening the ledger. At sunset, the ombudsman hall doors were opened. The silver intake bell rang once, not loudly, but every person in the square turned toward it. The black cloth came down. The first restored sign was plain. Public complaints heard here. Independent review. No closure without contact. Severin stood outside the threshold. Mistress Duskwood. She finished handing Amabel her second receipt before she answered. Your Majesty, the first silence complainants have received notices, interviews, protection assignments, and remedy elections. I am asking for one recorded private conversation, door open at the time and table you choose. His voice carried no claim, no romance hidden as reward, no protection offered as purchase. Valeria looked at the hall behind her, witnesses seated by choice, clerks writing under public rules, complaint boxes open only by consent, the bell uncovered. She looked at Severin next, at the dangerous man who had finally placed his power beneath the process he had broken. One conversation, she said. Recorded. Door open. Not tonight. After the first compensation orders are issued, his silver-gray eyes lowered with acceptance. Then I will wait for the process. No, Valeria said. You will work inside it. A faint smile touched his mouth, aching and deservedly uncertain. Yes. Behind them, the council wall remained silent. Not because complaints had vanished, because, across the square, the doors of Valeria Duskwood's hall stood open, and the living no longer had to knock from inside stone to be heard.